Hello, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are located. My name is Jamal Jones. I am a LMFT based out of Fresno, California, and a growth coach for therapists in private practice. And I love to help people or support people take inspired action with more clarity, confidence, and courage. And this morning, I have the privilege and honor of talking with a beloved colleague in our industry. I'm going to ask him to introduce himself. But before I do, I just want to say that on my journey in private practice, this is my fourth year in practice. And for those of you who are familiar with my story, I started out with a tech company, but then I got on one insurance panel. But there was a pivotal moment in my life and practice where I decided to leave the comfort and security of depending on that insurance panel for marketing, sales, and clients. And in that critical moment, I discovered this Facebook group called Private Pay Practitioners. And that was right what I needed. I was looking for a community. I was looking for people who had a similar mindset. And what do you know? The gentleman behind that Facebook group, I'm now going to turn it over to our beloved colleague, Mr. DJ Burr. DJ, tell us about who you are, anything about your story, and your vision behind the Private Pay Practitioners Facebook group, and anything else you like.
Hey, good morning, Jamal. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it. I'm DJ Burr. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, also a licensed professional counselor, depending on where I see my clients. I'm licensed in multiple states. I'm the owner of Able Life Recovery, and in my practice, I primarily work with people who are suffering from process addictions like sex addiction, compulsive spending or debting, codependency, and I also work with folks on trauma. I'm an EMDR trained therapist, and I have been in private practice 14 years this month.
Well, happy anniversary.
Thank you. Yeah, this is great.
So, DJ, 14 years, and you've niched down. When did you decide to niche down and focus on addictions and gambling and all those type of things?
Yeah, when I came into private practice, like I just thought I was just going to see everybody, right? They didn't really give us like a lane to follow in school. And so that's what I did. I just opened up my shop as soon as I, got out of grad school, and then I started seeing everyone. But what started to come into my office were addictions, and primarily like process addictions, like codependency and primarily sex addiction. And so I really started to do this work when I got into recovery for my own addictions. And so, and once I started doing that, everyone just kept showing up. I kept telling my story of recovery, and they kept showing up even more.
Wow, DJ, what you're describing is pretty amazing when you think about your personal growth, your personal healing, your personal development, in terms of you have your own struggles and history with addictions. And as you experience healing in that, it almost sounds like you began to either attract more of those people who needed to benefit from your story. What's it like being a mental health practitioner, doing your own work and getting healthy, and then all of a sudden folks start getting drawn to you for some reason like that?
Yeah, it was scary at first. I started doing addiction work in my internship, right? In internship, they kind of put you wherever they need you. And so I was doing some addiction treatment recovery groups in that setting. And even though I was helping folks, I didn't realize that I too had a problem. And so when I was starting to, get some understanding in my own therapy that, hey, I have some trauma in my history, I have some things I need to work on, I was kind of hit with it. And I was like, what? I was like, I don't have a problem, right? And my therapist, he said, you need to go to a meeting. And I was like, go to a meeting for what? And then he listed out some things. And so I started going to the meetings, and I was really scared. Because here I was a mental health practitioner, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had a private practice and also was working in community mental health. And I was afraid that like, oh, I have a lot of shame about who I am and what I've done in my history, and how am I going to show up and help my clients? But what I had to focus on was taking care of myself first, right? So I made a commitment to engage in all of the recovery programs that were recommended for me. And as I started to get clarity and I started to get sobriety, that's when people started showing up in like droves, right? And I was like, what's going on? And I was like, maybe this is what my focus should be. It shouldn't be just like, I'm going to help everybody, right? But maybe I should focus on these folks who have similar experiences. And it was a fascinating experience to see their changes while I was also changing.
Wow, DJ, you hit on so many different points. One of which is I can hear how you were younger, new to the industry. Were you required by your licensing board or by your graduate program to go into therapy, or did you voluntarily go into therapy out of your own will?
No, I wasn't required. I made a decision to go into therapy. And it was difficult to find a therapist. First of all, that's a problem in and of itself, right? But I wasn't required. But I know the importance of it, right? And so I sought out a therapist, and the first one was a good fit, but he didn't really guide me to the place where I ended up. But then I got in with my current therapist that I've been seeing for a long time, and he knew exactly where to send me, exactly what to say, right? And I'm grateful, totally grateful for that experience.
So you voluntarily found your own therapist because you wanted to grow and heal. It also sounds like you were so motivated that even though that first therapist wasn't the best fit, you didn't allow that to discourage you. Because oftentimes we get discouraged, like, oh, I went to my first therapist and it didn't work out. But you actually continued your search and you found a better fit. And once you found that better fit, you actually were like really cooperative in terms of like, hey, if you're recommending to me that I get in these groups, in addition to the investment already making with my time, energy, and resources coming to see you one-on-one, I give kudos to that provider for recommending you to go to these community group recovery programs while still serving you one-on-one. But I know for me, there's times where I've made the same recommendation, but for one reason or another, a client might not be ready to engage those other communities. They may just not want to do it. So I think it's really important just to commend you for like, you sought out your individual therapist. He gave you some recommendations and you followed up. Why?
Well, I'll say this. I didn't do it right away.
Okay.
I applaud him for being like consistent, right? And the message was consistent. At the end of every session, he was like, go to a meeting, go to a meeting, go to a meeting. And I think the real pain for me was that when he would say things like that, it was just bringing up a lot of my stuff, right? And so honestly, after those therapy sessions, I would like go engage in my addictions, right? And I was scared. And I would go back and tell him. And he's like, you need to go to a meeting. You need to go to a meeting. And so I would just continue to be more vulnerable. And then eventually he said, go to a meeting and then get a sponsor, right? So I started going to the meetings, and then he said, go get a sponsor. And I was like, well, what is this person going to do? And this person is going to take me through the 12 steps of recovery. And that's what I did, right? I was then introduced to somebody else who was in my corner, who was non-judgmental, right? Who was supportive, who provided that empathy and compassion that I needed. So I was then getting it from not only my therapist, but this virtual stranger, right? Who was supporting me. And so community is really important, right? And so that's one of the things that I focus on with my clients is helping them build a community and helping them kind of lean in, even though it might be a little scary, right?
That's a great point, DJ, because oftentimes our clients are coming to us because they're ashamed of things they've done, They feel guilty about either current or past experiences. They have high levels of anxiety and fear. They have thoughts of not wanting to live anymore. I mean, they come to us for all kinds of reasons. And initially, just to reach out to a therapist is very brave and courageous. Definitely. And we provide them the highest level of privacy and confidentiality and the empathy and compassion at that one-to-one level, which is very healing for them.
Yep.
Over the course of that one-to-one relationship, it's amazing how it begins to kind of slowly spill over into other parts of their life when they feel safe and they can take emotional risk and not be judged or shamed, but actually cared for and supported. And it almost sounds like in your journey, that's kind of what happened, was you felt really comfortable with your one-on-one therapist. They gained your trust and they were consistent in their recommendation. And for you, it began to spill over into other parts of your life.
That is absolutely 100% correct. Yep. That's how it happened. And so then, I was able to start setting more functional boundaries in my life, in my practice, right? I started being able to really understand my story and also understand my worth. And so I started telling that, in 12-step recovery, part of that healing is sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And so I just kept doing that. And one of the ways that I did that was I wrote a book. I wrote my memoir. I Just Wanted Love, Recovery of a Codependent Sex and Love Addict. And it was like in real time, I was writing about my lived experience about being a person in recovery and running my practice and trying to figure out my life, And when that book was published, people started finding it. And, I'll never forget this, but I got a call from someone while they were at the bookstore and they had a copy and they were like, "Are you accepting new clients?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's pretty cool." So absolutely, so it was really fun that my story was reaching people. And then they were in turn coming to me for help.
And as you began to share your story, did you notice that the more you shared your story in different settings and context, like the guilt and shame would just kind of die and go away?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't and I never tell my clients that they're going to be 100% rid of shame. That has not been my experience. But if I was to look at it on a scale of 0 to 10, it's about a 0.5. Right? So sometimes that stuff comes up a little bit, right? But I have some tools to manage that, right? And one of the ways that I continue to manage that shame is to name it and to share about it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here today.
I love it. That's so important for the audience to know, whether they're therapy clients or practitioners, because as human beings, I myself have gone through a faith-based recovery program, and I am a huge fan of the 12 steps. Just like you, I like to implement them into my personal life as part of my own healing journey. But for those who seek out therapy, sometimes clients might think that just seeing a individual therapist is enough, or seeing an individual marriage counselor is enough. And unless they're coachable and open to that idea of, yes, there is so much value in that one-to-one help, but at some point as part of your plan of care, it's essential for you to open up to trusted family, friends, recovery-oriented environments, people that can provide you that same level of empathy and compassion that you now have experienced firsthand in that either individual counseling or marriage counseling context.
Yeah, it's essential to have that support. And, some of my clients are very open to going and at least trying out a 12-step. Some not so much. And I totally get it because I was there too. So one of the things that I did was I started implementing support groups in my practice. And so for the last, I think, 6 years, I've been running a men's group for men recovering from compulsive sexual behavior. And I've also had groups focused on codependency recovery. And so if they were already working with me individually, they felt safe coming into a group that I also was a part of, that I was facilitating. And that has helped them build a network of support. And then sometimes from there, they do go into more of that community-based 12-step program. And then they can also kind of bring family and friends into the mix, into their recovery, as they set more functional boundaries, learn to communicate more effectively, and so on. Right. So that was another layer of support that I thought was essential to help people in their healing process.
Yes, yes. And something else that you hit on that I'd like to talk about briefly as well is this idea of being a licensed practitioner. And many times I hear, like in consultations with colleagues or in CEUs, this sense of people feeling like they're an imposter and having imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Can you speak to, because I see a parallel in your journey of like your personal growth, your development, your personal healing, you feeling less guilty, less ashamed about things in your life. And at the same time, you're a licensed professional counselor and you're helping these clients with issues that you are in recovery for.
Right.
What would you say to those people out there who are licensed practitioners or even unlicensed, but they work in some kind of helping profession, either as a mental health practitioner, perhaps as a pastor or a substance abuse counselor, just all those folks who are called, who they feel called to help other people, but they have their own personal struggles and they really are believing right now that they are an imposter and they shouldn't be doing it. What would you tell those folks?
Do your own work. You just have to do it, right? For me, it doesn't matter how long I've been recovering or how long I've been sober. I still have to keep doing the work, right? And so that's a recommendation that I would have is like, if you're going to help other people, also help yourself and make sure that you're helping yourself first, right? That's how I've learned. That's what works for me. You know, I still go to my therapy. I still go to my 12 steps. You know, I still have my programs of support, and it's just essential for my own well-being. And so I have to make sure I'm doing that so I can show up for like my family, my friends, and my clients and my colleagues. Right. And I'm glad that you're talking about the imposter syndrome. I'm not immune to that. Right. I mean, there was a time in the last year where I had to deal with some very, very traumatic experiences in my personal life that brought up like this imposter, right? Because I was like, oh, I can't deal with this stuff that's happening in my private life. And so therefore I can't help other people. Well, that's just not true, but that's an old tape that gets pushed and then it's a trigger, right? And so I just kind of doubled down on the work that I need to do in my personal life, right? So I could continue to show up. And it was painful. It was absolutely painful. But I'm still here, right? And I'm still doing it, you know, yes. Even though it was definitely hard in managing not only a practice, but I have a family. And also I have the therapist groups. I have 2 of them on Facebook, right? So I'm the admin to those. So I have all these different places where I'm supposed to show up, right? And so I have to keep doing all the things that I need to do for me so I can do that.
As you talk more and more, DJ, I can hear your commitment to your own self-care, your own growth, your own development. You also are a family man. You're an entrepreneur. It sounds like you have surrounded yourself with a ton of support.
Yeah.
And you have, in addition to that, you've built. Can you tell us a little bit of, because right now, if I understand, this private pay practitioners Facebook group, at one point it had a milestone of 9,000 therapists in this group. And this
Yes.
is a group that you monitor. I really enjoy the way you provide leadership in there when ethical issues come up. You keep people on top of like what the group rules are.
Yeah.
I mean, you really protect that space. So this isn't like a Facebook group where it's like it's cared for, it's nurtured. It's you are providing solid leadership for it. You even have folks who kind of assist you. So
Yeah.
can you tell us why? I mean, why would you start this group and why would you continue to dedicate the time and the energy and resources it takes to maintain it?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up. I mean, I started this group as a part of my recovery. Part of my story is that, I grew up in an environment where we did not get accurate information about finances, right? Was not taught how to manage money, was not taught anything about money except to spend it, right? And I grew up poor. We didn't have it to spend. And when we did, we were kind of left without. And so that mindset just continued on in my life. And so I was like always spending, trying to fill a void, right? And so I got into recovery for compulsive spending after several years of being in my other recovery program. And part of that program is, retiring debt and learning to
Mhm.
have more appropriate relationship with money, with finances. And so when I started doing that program, I made the decision to leave the insurance panels because what was happening was that as a therapist, I was on almost all of the insurance panels. And you probably have experience, right? They don't pay us enough to actually function,
Mm-mm.
right? And then they have the right to recoup funds up to
Mhm.
like sometimes up to 2 to 3 years if they made a mistake, if the client made a mistake, if the computer made a mistake, whatever, right? And then all of a sudden, what? Where's all my money? Well, they just took it back, right?
Mm.
And then there were times when there was delays in payments. And so every time that was happening, all my other addiction stuff was being triggered. So I was like,
Mm.
I can't continue to do this. I'm not functioning at the level that I want to function. And every time I have to chase down my money, it feels like I'm chasing down my worth. And I stopped. I couldn't do it anymore. Right. And because I got in this money program, I had support to do that. And so when I made the decision to leave the insurance panels, I then made the decision that I needed a support to do it, right? Not
Mhm.
just my 12-step program, but another community. So I sat down, started a group, private pay practitioners, and I said, maybe there's other people out there doing the same thing. And then here we are 7 years later, and we have like 9,400 and something members. And I manage the group. I'm an admin and I do have support. I'm very thankful for my support. But it also is like a community that needs, some hand holding at times,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yeah.
like 9,000 different people, 9,000, different experiences, personalities, histories, all the things, right? And so it does take some effort and care and kindness. And I try to bring that with every interaction.
DJ, we don't want to skip over something you talked about because when you talked about being on several insurance panels
Yeah.
and dealing with all the challenges of being an insurance-based practitioner, and there's this theme of okay, now you begin to get a healthy relationship with money in your life and finances, and you begin to see a connection between your personal relationship with money and how it was showing up in your business.
Yeah.
And when you saw that connection between your relationship with money and how it's shown up in your business, it's like you hit a critical point where, correct me if I'm wrong here, but did you feel like operating that way was now like a threat to your ability to stay in private practice, to continue being a mental health practitioner?
Yes, it was a threat to me staying in the business and it was a threat to my sobriety. and I protect that with all of my being. So I had to bounce. I had to get out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so powerful because you clarify your values. I
Yeah.
mean, you're the gatekeeper to your sobriety. You're the gatekeeper to your business. So you were obviously self-aware. Because the reason I want to slow down here is I got a feeling, because my story is similar to yours, um, where when we're undercharging we're on an insurance plan that's not reimbursing us at a high enough rate. Um, there's like a moment of decision of like, am I going to continue to be a licensed provider, or am I going to go to New York Life Insurance, or am I going to go get a whole new career?
Oh yeah.
Um, but you're an example of somebody who your career was threatened, your livelihood was threatened, um, and you decided to stay. And I just want to say, on behalf of your clients, on behalf of all of us who are part of the Private Pay Facebook community, on behalf of all those in your spheres of influence, I want to personally say thank you, DJ, for finding a way to stay in this industry and do the work on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
so that so that you've been able to continue to serve all those folks who are your assignment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. Yeah. For me, it just felt necessary. It just felt necessary. And I understand that there are providers that make the decision to accept insurance. I mean, I have insurance and I use my insurance
Mm-hmm.
when I can, right? I totally get it. It's just that it continues to, I think, threaten the livelihood of folks in private pay, right? And they need to make some changes in the insurance industry. And I can't sit around and wait for them to do that, right? Because I have like mouths to feed and clients to serve. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I made the decision, right? And people come to me and they say, "Well, how do you do it?" Well, I just tell them what I did. Here's the steps that I took, right? And so there are times when other colleagues, they come to me and want to consult with me, and I just sit them down and tell them what I did and help support them in terms of what they want to do.
Awesome. You also mentioned earlier the title of your book. I just wanted love.
Yes.
Please tell the listeners about anything about your book, where to find it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted love. It's my story. It's my story from the very beginning. I talk about, growing up in the South as a poor Black kid and gay in a dysfunctional family system, and how that left me vulnerable to abuse and abandonment and neglect. And, you know, um, I was victimized as a young kid by a perpetrator, and that just set me up on a path, right, to always be looking outside of myself for my validation. And I really focus on like that healing and what it was like for me to enter into recovery. And, and that's how I continue to live my life, right?
yeah.
And continue to help support people in various ways who want to take care of themselves and their families. And so I appreciate the ability that I have to show up in different environments and to do that, right? And so folks can find my book on Amazon. You can get a free chapter, the very first chapter, on my website, djburr.com. And, one of the other things that I did was I created 2 podcasts that I hosted a few years back. One was survivors of sexual abuse and assault. It's called Journey On. That's on all the podcast platforms. And I also have a podcast called Making an Addict, where I talk with other addicts in recovery, also colleagues who treat folks who are in addiction recovery, and family members and friends of people who are in recovery, just to talk about the stories, right? To talk about the experiences, talk about the hope, just getting the messages out there that it is possible to make change.
Thank you for sharing all of that, DJ. Can you talk to us a little bit more about your experience as a Black man in America? Anything you want to share with the audience about like how you navigate ethnically, what it means to you to be a Black man, and how you have built resilience, how you relate to people so that you can like be sane and able to show up for your life authentically. But also, can you also talk to us about not only what it's like to be a Black man in America, but you mentioned that you're gay. And to be a Black man
Yes.
in particular, and to be a gay Black man, that creates a whole nother layer of challenges that you've had to overcome. And would love for you to offer some insight to the audience on, you never know who's listening.
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing process for sure. Yes, I grew up as a gay Black man in the South. Grew up in Georgia, where it wasn't safe, one, to be Black, and it wasn't safe to be gay, right? Not in my experience of growing up. And so I had to navigate some really complex environments, even starting within my own family system, right? It it never felt safe to be myself, right? And so I was off, and that just contributed to like this feeling that I needed to be looking outside of myself for that validation, because I wasn't actually taught that I was precious, that I was valuable, right? All on my own, right? And maybe that was because of generational trauma. That was probably because of racism. I mean, there's so many things that contributed to that. And so I've been navigating that, my whole life. And now I'm a 40-something-year-old guy who's navigating the world where, in fact, my rights and privileges are often threatened, as a member of the gay community. My life as a Black man walking the streets is sometimes very threatened, right? And so there are things that I still have to deal with. And, I hope that by talking about this and by being on platforms such as yours to kind of share my own personal experiences, that you're right, somebody will hear it and maybe change will occur, right?
If you were like able to speak to a faith-based community, if you were speaking to a group of pastors of Christian churches, or a group of priests at Catholic churches, if you were speaking to all the religious leaders in our country, our spiritual leaders, I myself, I identify as a Christian. And this is an important issue within faith-based communities. How does a faith, what would you say are three things, or however many, some practical things that the faith-based community can do to love you, to, like you said, I just wanted to feel loved?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. And I don't know if I know the answer right off the top of my head, right? I probably need some time to reflect on that. But I guess what's I'm feeling called to say is that, one, I'm a human, respect me, right? And create an environment to the best of your ability where I can feel safe. And if you don't know how to do that, listen to what I'm telling you in order to make that happen.
As you're talking, DJ, not only that need for us to be loved, but this theme keeps coming up about safety. Mm-hmm. And when I think about safety, it's not just, physical safety is always a priority, of course. But particularly as professional counselors, we find ourselves trying to create psychological safety, where even if somebody might be in a situation where like they're confident that they're not going to be like assaulted or physically attacked by a person, can you talk about any experiences or give any insights about how to create psychological safety for people?
Ooh. I mean, we could be talking about this all day. Um,
We're
it's a,
almost done.
it's a process. It's a journey that I think we're all on, and to some extent. Um, I think one of the things that I do is that I've learned to do as part of my healing is learning to trust in a power that's greater than myself, and having a belief system that's rooted in a higher power that's not necessarily the Christian belief, or the Catholic belief or whatever, but it's my belief, right? It's creating a relationship with a power that I feel guided by, and that has helped me feel psychologically safe. And that's an ongoing process for me.
And I think what's key about that is, again, you're a self-aware person.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of pointing to your higher power that you believe in, and how your belief in your own higher power creates your own safety internally.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you have this internal safety, internal confidence that allows you to show up in the world the way that you want, as opposed to depending on or waiting for external factors to make you feel a certain way. Would that be correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And sometimes people don't have a similar experience that I have, right? And so one of the things that I try to encourage people to do is to pay attention to their bodies and their reactions to environments, to the stimuli that's out in the world. And if they don't feel safe, don't do it, right? I know that's not always easy to do, but I say listen to that. Pay attention to what's happening in your body. Like there's information there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why it's always important to try to have people that you can bounce ideas off of, people you can check things in with, like a therapist, like a sponsor, like a coach, right? Or maybe even a priest or a pastor, right? That you can check things out with, where you feel safe to say, like, when I enter this space, this is how I feel about that. And this is what I'm thinking about that. What are your thoughts, right? Just to try to get that insight that's needed to make more informed decisions. And so that's one of the reasons why therapy is great. And that's why I continue to show up for it as a therapist. And I continue to go to therapy as a client.
Thank you, DJ. Definitely want to respect your time. As we move toward wrapping things up, can you update the listeners on where are you located? Are you taking openings in your practice, either for individual or group? Remind us about your book. Do you have any new offers? How can people follow with you if they want to do business with you or be served by you in any way?
Yeah, the easiest way to kind of find out what's going on with me is my website, djburr.com. I do share some things on social media, Instagram, the DJ Burr. My book is I Just Wanted Love, Recovery of a Codependent Sex and Love Addict, available on Amazon via paperback or Audible. You can also find it on iTunes. My podcast, Making an Addict, and also Journey On, is available wherever podcasts are streamed. I have limited openings in my practice for individual clients. I am taking on like a wait list for group clients. And so information can be found on my website. And I do work with therapists in private practice who are considering making changes to their practice and going into a private pay, where maybe they're not on all the insurance panels, or they're making the leap off of the insurance panels. And I can be reached on my website for information about that as well.
DJ, you are a gift to this world. Thank you so much I reached out to you and you said yes. And that means so much. It's nice to meet you this way.
Yeah.
I hope to one day be able to give you a high five or a hug or a handshake or something in person.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really want to appreciate it, and thank you for inviting me to this space to have this conversation. I think it's an important conversation to have, and I look forward to seeing all the other folks that you have on your show.
Thank you, DJ. Well, to all those listening, thank you for gracing DJ and I with your ears and your attention. We wish you all the best, whether you're watching this live or watching the recording. Be encouraged.
Yes.